Hello, and welcome to the JCC of Metro Detroit's 70th Annual Detroit Jewish Book Fair. My name is Ellen Maisloff, and I'm the Senior Director of the Opening the Doors program at the JCC of Metro Detroit. It is my pleasure to welcome you this Sunday afternoon to My Life on the Autism Spectrum, Misunderstandings, Insight, and Growth with Tracey Cohen, the third installment in the Mitten Moments series featuring Michigan authors. Thank you for also joining us to celebrate Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month. We join our colleagues across the country to advocate for inclusive and accessible opportunities for people of all abilities. Opening the Doors, a nationally recognized program, provides innovative learning support services annually to 1,000 students with learning, social, emotional, and/or mental health concerns. Services such as special educators, paraeducators, classroom assistants, psychoeducational evaluations, and tutoring enable diverse learners to succeed in inclusive Jewish education classroom experiences. Opening the Doors also partners with education and health organizations to provide teacher workshops, teen leadership program, and community disability conferences and movies which educate, include, and empower. To learn more about Opening the Doors, visit our website. Go to jcc-families/special-needs/ or go to jccdetroit.org and do the drop-down menu where it says Special Education Programs. We are celebrating 70 years of the Detroit Jewish Book Fair with a year of book and story programming. To see our full schedule, watch events that you've missed, or find an online store where we also are featuring and selling My Life on the Autism Spectrum and plenty of other hand-selected books and gifts, visit our website. You can see it on the screen now. If you enjoy this event and other book fair events, please consider becoming a patron or donating to Book Fair. You can do either or both at our website on the screen now. We rely on community support to make this annual event possible. So thank you in advance for becoming part of our family. And if you would like to find out more about Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month or Opening the Doors, visit our JCC website at jccdet.org. I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to the whole Book Fair Committee and Opening the Doors team. Your dedication, innovation, commitment, and hard work make all of this possible. We have a fascinating event for you this afternoon, and we want you to be part of it. You can ask questions and offer comments in the YouTube comment section below, or by texting the number in the corner of your screen. Our speakers have a great discussion prepared, and they will take as many questions as they have time. While you're here at your YouTube channel, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the reminder bell. That way, you'll never miss any of our exciting events. The focus of today's event is My Life on the Autism Spectrum, Misunderstandings, Insight, and Growth with author Tracey Cohen. We also have with us Katie Oswald, Executive Director of Full Spectrum Agency for Autistic Adults, who will moderate this discussion. In her third book, My Life on the Autism Spectrum, Tracey Cohen gets more personal about her own journey living on the autism spectrum. Her goal of exposing herself so candidly is to help others know that they are not alone in their journey. And to help smooth their path, she aims also to help neurotypicals more clearly understand life on the autism spectrum. Tracey Cohen is an experienced ultra runner, author, and speaker, and has competed in thousands of races around the world. Tracy was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome at the age of 39 and speaks regularly about autism to school groups and at conferences. She is the author of several other books, including 6-word lessons on female Asperger syndrome and 6-word lessons on the sport of running. Katie Oswald is a facilitator, nonprofit founder, and autistic self-advocate. She founded Full Spectrum Agency for Autistic Adults in 2018, where she facilitates peer support groups, discussion groups, and many other programs for over 500 autistic group members. She also advocates for autistic adults in the community through corporate workshops, conferences, presentations, and interviews. Please join me in a warm welcome for Tracey Cohen and Katie Oswald.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen. Wonderful to be here. So I know I'm really excited to be here as a fellow autistic adult and a colleague and friend of Tracy. I know I've already learned a lot from her in the time that I've known her, and I know you guys will here today. So we have a lot of questions prepared, and I'm sure there'll be some from the viewers as well. Before we dive right into the questions, Tracy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, yeah. So thanks, Katie, and thank you everyone who is spending their Sunday tuning in and listening. Yeah, I was born on the autism spectrum, but myself and my family had no knowledge of autism until I was about 30, and then I wasn't diagnosed until I was 39. So as you can probably imagine, life was pretty difficult in a lot of ways. There were a lot of arguments, a lot of battles, a lot of misunderstandings. But despite everything, I made it through school, and I went on to the University of Michigan, where I earned a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology and a K-12 teaching certificate. I taught for about 10 years before going into the Peace Corps. And I did education in the Peace Corps. And then my path changed a little bit because of some family health issues when I got back. But and I've done a lot of things in my life for a lot of reasons. But right now I am the author of 3 books. 6-word lessons on female Asperger syndrome, 100 lessons to understand and support girls and women with Asperger's was my first. Whoops, there we go. And I'm also an ultra runner, as Ellen mentioned. 6-word lessons on the sport of running, 100 lessons to enjoy running for a lifetime was my second book. And then my third book is the one we're talking about today, My Life on the Autism Spectrum, Misunderstandings, Insight, and Growth. So I'm happy to be an author and facilitator and speaker. And the one thing that has always been important to me is helping others, helping our world in any way I can. So
Great. Thank you. And I've read the books about autism. I haven't read the book about running, but I'm sure it's just as good. And I've been really proud of Tracy and her achievements with the running as well. So, Tracy, can you talk a bit about some of the challenges that you've had growing up autistic, but not having that awareness of the diagnosis?
Yeah. So communication has been a big challenge. I've always been very, very literal and had real trouble with change, as well as sensory issues. And there's a story I like to tell. When I was young, I was my sister and I used to share a room, and it got to the point where we got older, and my parents were giving my sister her own room. And we had, in the room that I was keeping that we grew up in, there was this awful, terribly ugly yellow carpeting. And there was actually, one of us had gotten sick, and there was still a stain in the room. And my parents had the great idea to replace the carpeting, and they thought this was a wonderful thing. And when they told me about it, I just grew ballistic. I blew up, and they just thought I was, they didn't understand. They just thought I was being a brat, and I didn't have the knowledge or communication skills to be able to tell them why. And so eventually, I realized that it was going to happen. And they told me, well, you can come with us to the store and pick out the carpeting, and you can pick out absolutely any carpeting that you want. And I was still upset, but we went, and I found this gorgeous soft white carpeting. And it's like, okay, that's the one. And they just looked at me like I was nuts. And again, being literal, they told me I could have any carpeting that I wanted. And I just blew up. And, it was those kind of things throughout my life that, my parents, teachers, they just thought I was just this brat. And, again, I didn't have the knowledge or communication at that time. I'll be 51 this year. At that time, there wasn't a lot known about autism, and especially about females.
Yeah. I can relate to that so much, Tracy. And I know I have countless stories like that myself. So I think a lot of people view kids when that's kind of thing is happening as just being brats or having a temper tantrum and not understanding that there's a difference in the way our brains function. So thank you for sharing that story.
And that there's something about things that are familiar that, we have to deal with the world, every day. And that room was my sanctuary with all the things that I knew, the carpeting, and those were kind of my rocks. And they were taking that away, and they didn't understand that. And again, I didn't have the knowledge and understanding to communicate that.
Right. You don't when you're young. And so that idea of having like a sanctuary or safe space, I know I still have that as an adult. And so we're better able to communicate to people when we need something to not be changed suddenly. But that's the worst, to have that space that you go to that's like your safe space, have something changed or taken away from that. Mm-hmm.
Right. And being very literal, being told that I can have anything that I wanted. They didn't understand that. I didn't assume that there might be exceptions.
Right. Yep. You would not assume that. Yeah. So we're having some comments in the chat too that thank you from Carol. Tracy is very brave and articulate. And I know we're working on the closed captioning. I don't think there's something we can do about that, but everybody should be able to do closed captioning if they're on Facebook or YouTube, I think. But we don't have the capability to do that within the software we're using. So sorry about that. But thank you for the comments, and keep them up. And any questions that come up along the way, I think we'll be taking as we go. So
I'm happy to answer. I'm an open book. I'm happy to answer anything anybody wants. I'm here for you all who are taking their time to listen.
Thank you. And Tracy, tell us a little bit about how that process of being diagnosed as an adult went for you. What was that like?
Yeah, well, that was crazy, and also very, very difficult and very rewarding. So it was for a new job that I was starting. I was hired to work specifically with a little boy who his parents were told that they thought that he had Asperger syndrome, but they really didn't know what it was, and they wanted me to work with them. I'd never heard of it, Asperger syndrome or autism. And so continuing my education has always been important, and we found a conference for me to go to learn more about it, to help the little boy. And the speaker started talking, and here I'm there to learn about the little boy, and all of a sudden he's telling a story about me. and he's validating all the different struggles and understanding so many things about me that not only didn't my family understand, but I didn't even understand myself.
Sure.
And the tears just started rolling. And I went and spoke to him after, and he said that my reaction was not out of the ordinary. He'd seen that, but if I felt so strongly that I should learn more and possibly seek a diagnosis. So that's what I did. It was a pretty rocky road because, again, not a lot was known about females. And when, after learning more and speaking with my parents, who my dad was the deciding factor. He's a skeptic of all skeptics. And when he put all the pieces together and it all made sense, I decided to pursue a diagnosis because, you go 30 years. I'm not the type of person to make an excuse. So the first psychologist that I went to, he was a man, and he basically, I'm 30 or 31 at the time, and he basically tried to diagnose me the same way you would diagnose a young little boy. And he had no knowledge of females, and he was very condescending, and he basically his final summation was, he's like, well, you got something, but I don't know what it is. And it was pretty devastating. He made me feel like a phony and a fraud, and I just decided, okay, well, I have to go on with life anyway. Let me just move on. But it was something that I continued to read and learn, and just everything that I read and learned just equated to me, to who I am. It explained all my struggles. And it was actually at a conference I went to, put on by Tony Atwood, who's just absolutely wonderful. And he took the time to speak with me. And he's like, well, yeah, that was your mistake. There's still a lot of need for information about females, and he didn't know of any good of any psychologist in my area who might be knowledgeable. But he referred me to someone out in Oregon, and the short of it is, my mom and I flew out there, and at the end of her assessment, she said 100%, and actually said even that had I been diagnosed when I was young, it might have been classic autism rather than Asperger syndrome. You learn and grow, you either sink or swim in this world. And so, it was validating, but also kind of scary because, well, what's the stigma going to be? And also a little bit of a letdown because it's not like, you have a broken leg and you put it back together with surgery.
Right.
And most of the coping mechanisms that she gave me, I had kind of just by default found on my own. And the other thing that was pretty difficult was when we called home to the rest of my family to let them know, their response was, great, now how do we fix you? And so that was a little troubling, a little hurtful. But as time and the years have gone on, again, it's provided some validation. It allows me to make better decisions for myself. I continue learning, and I'm able to understand things in and around me better. So I can't say that diagnosis is the right decision for everybody. I would never, try to make that choice for somebody, but it was definitely the right decision for me. And I would say that knowledge is definitely power, however you go about it.
Right. Regardless of whether you get diagnosed or not, like knowing yourself and knowing like how to set right boundaries for yourself is really what's important, I think. So yeah, I had a very similar experience to you, Tracy, with my diagnostic process. And I think that for adults generally, but especially women, the diagnostic process is not really, um, quite there yet, but it's making some progress. But you mentioned also that response from your family that can be so damaging of, how do we fix you? And I think that lack of understanding of society largely, um, that it's something that we can fix, and not understanding that, yeah, we might be able to work on some of our challenges, but the autism is part of who we are as people. So do
Yeah.
you have anything to comment on that?
Yeah. Exactly. It's, we all have challenges, and people with autism, we're not we're not broken, and we're not wrong. we
Right.
we have different needs, and different ways of, looking at the world and going about things. And that's not to say that we don't have things we need to work on, like,
Sure.
understanding when we're interrupting, and, giving people time and being more tactful. But, just by and large, our different, needs and wants and desires, and again, ways about, I'm a very blunt, honest person, and that's gotten me into a lot of trouble. But I personally, even if it feels hurtful, appreciate the same from other
Right.
people, because just like with that story I told earlier about the carpeting, um, I don't do well reading between the lines. I don't want to have to work for that. I think telling it like it is with tact is, the best way to go, because I find, at least for me, it's less hurtful, and,
Hmm.
wastes much less of people's time.
Right.
Um, I'm actually in. I don't know if now is the time I should do it, but,
Go ahead.
I see a comment from
Yeah, I was going to
Stephen.
ask the. Oh,
Yeah, I'm in actually the chat part. I was letting you handle the comments, but I
yeah,
didn't
we
know
do
if I
have a,
should
a comment and
address that.
question. Oh, I see. There's one in the other one too. Let's go with
Yeah.
Molly's first.
Oh, okay.
Um, we do have a question from Molly in the chat, in the comments. She said, "I follow many autistic content creators on social media. Awesome, and have been noticing lately much discussion about self-diagnosis of autism. What are your thoughts on that matter?"
About self-diagnosis on autism?
Self-diagnosis, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's more or less what I did. I felt the need to get it official. Again, because I I I've never been one to make excuses, and I don't use my autism diagnosis as an excuse. But, um, having grown up being told and made to feel as if I was, stupid and wrong, and,
Hmm.
have all these issues. It's nice to know that there is a reason that I'm different, and that I'm not just crazy, and that I'm not just difficult, and that, my struggles are as valid as any others.
Yes.
Now, getting that diagnosis, again, that I feel is a very personal decision. If somebody is self diagnosing because they're reading and they're educating themselves, and they're like, wow, this all adds up and this helps me, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Again, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ever make any, rash, decision, without, learning and really exploring. But anything that helps us in life, I
Right.
think is great.
Yeah, and it's a diagnosis is not always as accessible to some adults because it's not covered by insurance. And if it's people are using what they're learning to help themselves, I agree with that too. Yeah.
And again, especially with females,
Yeah.
not all professionals are knowledgeable of the female expression. And,
Yeah.
I won't go into it, long in detail, but I had an interaction with a medical doctor who it was just in the past couple years who I decided to share my diagnosis with. And, apparently because I can, speak and kind of fake it till I make it, he gave me the most condescending look. And he's like, "Who told you that?" He's like, "No, you're not. I have a relative who has diagnosis, and you're nothing like her." And
As if
that's
we're all identical, right?
right. That's just the, that phrase,
Yeah,
if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, is very, very true.
it is
Um,
very true.
so
Yeah, I feel we could talk about that specific topic uh, for at least an entire session. There's so much to talk about. So thank you for answering that. And I know there was a question in the other chat from Stephen. Did you want to cover that one, Tracy? Do you want me to do that
sure,
one?
sure.
Okay.
He was asking if I've had any challenges attending or participating in temple services or programs. Absolutely. The bigger the crowd, um, the harder it is for me. I get very, very overwhelmed very quickly. I have a lot of sensory struggles. Physical space is one of them, and often things are crowded and tight and loud. And what I hearing is a real big challenge, and often things what might not be loud to one person, I generally hear things probably about 10 times louder than the most. So um, things have been just very, very loud. So yeah, any type of program, and just uh, and I don't want anybody to get this wrong. Autistic people, and definitely myself, I like people and I enjoy people.
Me too.
I I just get overwhelmed quickly, and I'm the type of person who needs a lot of space, a lot of alone time. Not a reflection necessarily on anybody else. It's just the way I am. And, when people think social, they think about going to a coffee shop and chatting with their friends, or, going out in the evening for dinner. Um, but at least social for me is everything. This is very social. Attending a
Yes.
service, even if I'm not talking to somebody, is very
Right.
social. And it's just very, very overwhelming and intimidating. And, always wondering, well, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Because I've had, again, many misunderstandings over the year and offended somebody, or not looked the right way, or and come to
Yeah.
find out later. And it's so absolutely.
Yeah, and that's part. It's part of that self knowledge too. The thing you mentioned that I want to highlight on that is, as far as think places being accessible, that things are maybe 10 times louder for you than they are for the average person. And that's one of those things in learning about yourself that, there were some of those things that I didn't even realize until I was an adult, that I wasn't experiencing things in the same way others are. So there's a process of learning and understanding that the way you experience the world is different than how
Yeah,
other people might experience it.
yeah. I can remember having maybe the vacuum being run and absolutely going berserk, or
Yeah.
just some kind of loud sound, or the volume on the TV. And I just remember thinking, is this really how people like to hear it? And
Yeah.
because I would get reprimanded for making a big deal out of it, and
Yeah.
or what to my folks was a big deal. And again, just Tracy being a brat, um And I just couldn't understand, wow, people really like it.
Yeah, and how were other people like kind of coping with that, you know?
Yeah,
Like how
yeah.
come that confusion over that.
And so now I have different strategies to cope. There are things that I'll choose not to go to, or even if I have the knowledge of some place is going to be, crazy or, really loud, I, I come up with a plan, just again, knowing that going in, and maybe I'll tend to make it a shorter visit than longer. Just coming up with a plan to be as successful as possible.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in with Naomi's question in the chat as well. Of I know we do have some specific questions about advice for others, so we'll touch on that later. But what coping mechanisms have you found specifically helpful?
Yeah. So understanding the situation that I'm going into, and as much as possible, kind of, the unexpected, the unknown, is very difficult. So I'll try to, learn as much as I can, about what I'm going into. Change is always a big one for me. I can't tell you how many times, things have gotten canceled, or people have said they're going to, be somewhere or call at a certain time. And for me, again, being very literal, if somebody says 3 o'clock, I'm thinking 3 o'clock, not
Right.
3:05, not 3:15.
Yeah.
Now having the understanding and the diagnosis and the insight, I now understand that when something is scheduled for a certain time, or somebody says they're going to do something or call, I know that it might not be at the exact time. It might be later, or it might not
Yes.
happen at all. And so, as much as possible, again, I have some type of backup plan, because when something's canceled, it completely throws me off and ruins my
Yeah.
day. And so I try to have an alternate where, okay, well, if this doesn't happen, then I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really helped me a lot. So
Yeah.
different things like that.
A backup plan is always really helpful for me as well, and as well as scheduling in breaks, because I know I'm going to need them. So when I put my schedule together for the day or the week, making sure I schedule in those breaks for solitude so that I don't get overwhelmed. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. And a comment from Susan Rogers. Hi, Susan.
Oh, hi,
Tracy,
Susan.
yeah. She said to Tracy and Katie, I have so much respect for you. Thank you for your many contributions and educating others. Thanks so much, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. That means a lot.
And an anonymous comment. I'm sad you came up against so much condescension. I'm happy for your diagnosis, or I'm happy your diagnosis has allowed you to embrace who you are. Thank you to Anonymous, too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
process, still ongoing, but working on it.
It is, and I always notice a lot of similarities in all of our experiences, and so when we're able to get together too in a group of autistics, is always really, really helpful too. There's a lot
And
of
that's something
yeah.
else that's very validating, because
Mhm.
again, never looking for an excuse, when if I can write my books and I can help parents and people with autism,
Right.
and if I can hear something like from Katie where, yep, I can relate to all that, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, if I were a fraud, then I probably couldn't, I wouldn't have been able to come up with this.
Right, and there are so many of those situations, especially for women, and we call that gaslighting usually, and trying to make us feel like frauds, like we don't know our own situation. So yeah, but thank you for the comments, guys. And I know we had a question in here about so how common it is for autism to be missed in women and girls, and I feel like you kind of touched on that already. Tracy, so unless you have, do you have any specific comments that you wanted to share about the challenges women face in being properly diagnosed, or we can move on for time?
Just a couple of quick things.
Yeah.
Again, I feel that professionals, not just those doing the diagnosis, but medical doctors as well. You know, parents are gonna go to with their young kids and ask for advice. They need to recognize the signs. But some real things to remember. When somebody goes undiagnosed, females especially tend to have better communication skills than males, and we tend to be less volatile, less aggressive, and so we slip under the radar, and we're also a lot more kind of willing and wanting to please, and so we mask,
Yeah.
and we try to cover up our struggles and make it look like everything is at least I know I try, as natural as possible. We try to make other people feel comfortable. We try to just fit in. And for somebody to mask all the time, that's actually very detrimental for them, and it's exhausting. And it's not allowing it doesn't mean that we're not genuine, but it doesn't allow for more personal growth and for us to be who we really are. And the other risk is misdiagnosis.
Right.
I've heard many people be diagnosed with things that are absolutely untrue, and been forced to take some very harmful medication, or
Sure.
put in places where it's just, again, very I know myself. I was assumed one thing, and I was put in an institution for a couple of years, and it was probably one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. Um, but so yeah, those are just things to remember, and just another reason why professionals, teachers as well, need to get more familiar with the female expression. And, again, all of you who are here who are willing to learn, I know that if my mom had, anybody who had the slightest clue, it would have made a huge difference in all of our lives.
Yeah. And
So,
those misdiagnoses and the masking as well that you mentioned are can be so detrimental. Like long term have been masking, especially, has been tied to many negative mental health outcomes for autistic people, including suicidality. So yeah, these are very important topics to be discussing with society so that there's a better understanding. Yeah, for, like Tracy said, for those very parents who are not sure what's going on with their child and how can we best help them.
I highly recommend autism societies, and those familiar with autism and the female expression.
Yeah, thank you. So I know we've talked a lot about challenges, and we want to hear some of your successes too. So I know you've had many triumphs, and I know Ellen mentioned some of them in the beginning about you've earned a degree from University of Michigan, served in Peace Corps. Tracy was the first person I met who was also an autistic person who served in Peace Corps. So when we met, that was the first thing we learned about each other.
Yeah.
You completed I can't even remember the number, a crazy number of marathon length runs or more, and also becoming an author. So tell us about some of these accomplishments and what they mean to you.
Yeah, they really mean a lot to me. You know, again, kind of keeping in mind that everybody has different needs and goals. Running has always been a big part of me, and kind of my better half, if you will. And yeah, I love all the race distances from the shortest on up. But I've completed 81 combined of marathons and ultra marathons. For those who don't know what an ultra marathon is, it's anything beyond 26.2 miles. and I've competed in 2 Boston marathons, and 3 of my ultras have been 100-milers. And that's as far as I've gone, but I hope
That's
to,
incredible.
to thank you, to run further someday. But yeah, my degree means a lot to me. Serving in Peace Corps, again, I've always been the type of person who wants to help others in any way that I can, and so that was a very big deal for me and very important. And while I have not been able to make it back to serve, I still, as much as possible, do the third goal of, bringing understanding of the country I served in here, the country being Namibia, and do some advocacy. But also, I believe it was in 2017, I had a big honor for myself. I was awarded the Ted Lindsay Individual Courage Award, which is an award given to one autistic person who demonstrates great character and perseverance in living with the challenges of autism. And especially not being diagnosed until I was 39 and having, a lot of doubters and people saying, oh, well, you can't have autism, or saying something to the effect of, oh, well, I get it. I have trouble with that too. It's kind of like pneumonia and the common cold or allergies. You can have the sniffles and, for, maybe you have a cold, or maybe it's just, the air in the room that day, or you can have full blown pneumonia and really be. And so being recognized that I'm not a fraud, and validating that I'm doing these things, even though they're really hard for me, that was just truly, that was one of the biggest honors of my life.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And my books, those have been a big accomplishment for me, and especially with the first one, basically being told I would fail, and kind of I've never had, especially, growing up, I grew up with pretty much zero confidence, but just for whatever reason, always been very stubborn, and kind of when there's something that I, for whatever reason, feel very passionately about, I kind of persevere, and one way or the other get it done. So so they, it kind of means a lot to me, and to be acknowledged, and just first and foremost, that, which is the reason why I wrote my first book and the others, to help people. And while they're not, on the New York Times bestseller list, the number of comments that I've received from parents and educators and people on the spectrum that it's helped them in one way or the other is exactly my purpose, and very, very validating, and just means the world to me. And again, thank you all for being here.
Yeah. So yeah, the books have been helpful for a lot of us on the spectrum also. So I know folks in my group have read it. I've read your books. And so, it sounds like that's what led you to become an author, is that wanting to help others through this journey.
Yeah.
That's great.
And just if there's a minute to expand on that, just
go ahead. We do have a couple more questions I want to make sure we get to, but please go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, because I continued learning, and I checked the resources at the back. I never ever considered being an author, let alone writing something like my third book about myself. But in the back of the book was, are you an expert on something? Become an author. And, I guess I want to say to parents and people on the spectrum, don't doubt yourself. don't be afraid to take risks and take on something that you might have never knew was out there or never even considered. Because if you told me that, one day
Yeah.
I'd be an author, even a small author like I am now, and that people would actually want to hear what I had to say, I would tell you that you're absolutely crazy. And so don't discount the dreams and hopes, interests
Yes.
of your children. Help channel them in the right direction. Don't want them to become all consuming, but never minimize something. And same thing for
Yes.
people on the spectrum. You balance is important, but again, taking risks are, and just knowing that really there isn't anything that you can't do if you're not willing, if you're willing to work hard enough at it. So,
Yeah, and I think your stories that you're sharing with us, Tracy, are I was thinking about that when you were telling about all of your accomplishments, and that as you grew up and you shared that experience of going to the institution for a couple of years and all of that stuff that you struggled through, that what people can really be capable of when people believe in them and don't underestimate their capabilities. So I mean, we see evidence in your life and a lot of other people's lives of how much autistic people are truly capable of. So thank you for sharing all of that, truly. We do have another question in the comments about how was it for you making and maintaining friends as a child?
it was difficult. Um, I I was, I've always been kind of more of a soft spoken kind of person. And I did deal with some bullying, along the way, but mostly, I was pretty much on the sidelines, and, the lack of inclusion was very, very obvious, even though I would get overwhelmed quickly. Um, it just, there was that connection, and how to make it has always just kind of, just been very, difficult, and kind of like, how do people do that? Um,
Yeah.
but I've always been involved in athletics, and uh, having, some success, and working hard on it, being on, the different sport teams, that really helped, and helped to pave my way. And even though I wasn't, necessarily quote unquote popular or part of the group, I think I earned some, respect, and just general kindness, and kept away some of the bullying. I did certainly make friends here and there, but it was hard. It was difficult. I won't kid you. It continues to be, a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is, um, quality over quantity. And
Yes, absolutely.
if you have a few good people in your life who you can really and truly call a true friend, I'll take that over 1,000 acquaintances any day.
Same here. Yep. And highlighting, I want to highlight what you mentioned about it's still a challenge. So that misconception that sometimes people have, that those challenges that kids have when they're autistic, like that those go away. They don't really go away. So the learning methods of coping, that's what's so important. Those
Exactly.
challenges.
They don't go away. I
Yeah.
think we're able, a lot of times, a lot of us are able to hide them better, or
Yes.
handle them better, and have different coping strategies, and also start to understand what is it that we really want, and really need. Again, I get overwhelmed quickly, and when my, phone blows up, or I'm being asked to, talk or interact more than I'm really capable of. It works in the opposite way. It's nice, except that because I'm so overwhelmed, I tend to get snippy, and I never want to act that way towards somebody. So a lot of times I have to decline invitations, just because I know that it's going to be too much for me, and that can
Yes.
come off the wrong way. That can come off as, being a snob and not, you know, just not wanting to be a part of, where really it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I'm just having a bad day, or just, you know, can't, or if I leave someplace early, it's no reflection on the other people. It's
Right.
too much for me.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much. It is very difficult to manage those boundaries. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to make sure we touch on, I know we're at about 50 minutes, but so advice that you have for families, and in terms of especially some challenges that autistic kids have in more unstructured situations, like going to the grocery store, restaurants, and at recess on the playground, for example. Like, are there any ways that parents can prepare their kids for being more successful in those kind of settings?
Yeah. I would say, something like the grocery store or going to a restaurant. Let your let your child be part of the process. Um, let him or her have, some choices. For instance, talk about where you're going to go to eat. If maybe you're going to eat somewhere and there's nothing on the menu that, or you're going to a family member's home for, for a holiday meal, and there's not going to be anything that your child is going to eat. So pack a lunch, pack a dinner. It's just food.
Right.
um, and, something like the grocery store, as much as possible. Let them know what to expect. Create a routine. Go in a certain order in the grocery store. Try to go at times when it's not as busy. And sometimes you're just gonna have to cut things short. Sometimes things are going to happen, and rather than putting yourself and the employees and other people, and especially your child, through a terrible situation, sometimes you just have to say, you know what, we're just going to have to abandon this and try another
Right.
day. And the same thing for social interactions. I've heard about, parents who, or, forcing kids to go to, or kids going to a birthday party, and something happening, something triggering them, where all of a sudden they're in a bad place, or just knowing that an hour is going to be too long. So that's
Yeah.
okay. Show up for 10-15 minutes. Let them say
Right.
hi. Let them get some of the experience. And just res- listen to your child, and respect their needs and wishes. Don't assume that they're just, being bratty, or being difficult.
Yeah, they're likely expressing a need. Um, yeah, that's good. That's good advice. And I know for me, what helped too is having an opportunity to have some downtime and quiet time before something like a grocery store trip with my mom when I was a kid, and then knowing that I was going to be allowed to have some kind of quiet solitude time afterward too, so that I wouldn't have to be wondering, am I going to go like from this to another overwhelming experience back to back? Mm-hmm.
And with
Yeah.
something, that's going to be overwhelming, sensory wise, for me, a lot of the things for my ears don't work. But you can use, earplugs, you can use sunglasses, you can
Right.
use earmuffs. Have something that, to bring with your child, that will, distract them, that will allow them to focus on something, other than the overwhelming situation. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And we've got some kind comments in the chat too from Carol. Is thanking you for the valuable insight and personal experience that can be helpful and supportive. And your accomplishments are awesome. And from Vicki Webster and her sister Donna Swanson too. They knew you as a devoted runner since the early 80s. Didn't know about your diagnosis.
Hi, Donna. Thank you. Happy birthday.
So seeing that she's proud of you and humbled by your success. So that's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So any advice for autistic people? Like, I know we probably have a lot of family members of autistic children and maybe adults in the audience, but any advice in case we have maybe some autistic adults or young people in the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. A number of things. First, keep in mind that, again, everybody has challenges. And so whether they're better at, hiding them or not. And for both parents and people on the spectrum, autism is not something to be ashamed of. Whether or not you decide to reveal a diagnosis or a self-diagnosis or suspicions is personal, but never be ashamed. It should never be something that's a secret. And in addition, for people on the spectrum, kind of like what I was saying before, never stop learning and never doubt yourself. Remember that you can accomplish things that you want, even if they're not exactly as you might picture it. Keep being willing to, it takes a lot of hard work, and we need to work hard and keep going. But that's important. Allow yourself breaks. And know you're going to have bad days, and that's okay. And we all need breaks, and sometimes a day just to feel sorry for ourselves, lick our wounds. But don't stay that way. There's always a way to pick yourself up, and even though there might be a number of bad experiences, there are a lot of really wonderful, kind people out there. And
That's true.
just find them. And I'll recommend Katie's Full Spectrum for Autistic Adults. Yeah, it's Katie offers a lot of free meetup opportunities. A lot right now with the pandemic are virtual. But as the weather gets warmer and as the pandemic subsides, there will be, more in person. And, there are a lot of different opportunities to meet up with, like-minded people who share struggles and successes and who are going to understand. There are a lot of resources out there for people on the spectrum now.
There really are many more opportunities than there used to be.
Katie, and if you want to put your website and your meetup website in the chat, but it's Full Spectrum Agency for Autistic Adults. Autism Alliance of Michigan also offers a lot of resources for people on the spectrum.
And OU Cares out of Oakland too has some great programs for kids and adults.
Absolutely. And there are a number of autism societies around the state. There's the Autism Society of Michigan in Lansing, which I'm most familiar with, but I know there are different ones all around the state and all around the country.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to be isolated anymore. I know that was what I found when I started my organization in 2018, that I was surprised how many people were struggling in isolation, and helping them get kind of connected to a group of people that they can relate to was so important. And there are those opportunities from a variety of organizations now.
And be proud of the person that you are, and the accomplishments that you do make. We the last, and I'm better at giving advice than taking it, but it's very, very true. Never compare yourself to somebody. Again, we all have different strengths and different challenges, and be proud of who you are and what you do, and just keep going.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tracy. And we're getting some more comments in the chat. Naomi said it's been so inspiring. Thank you so much. And Carol, should be shared with every classroom teacher. I agree. Thank you for saying so.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any closing comments? Any last questions?
Gosh,
there's so many things we could say, I think, right?
Absolutely. I have a whole page of of notes here of things that I want to say. But truly, thank you everybody who has taken the time to come and listen. I know that again, there are a lot of great resources out there. Like I've said, I do this not because it's easy, not for fame and fortune, but because I want to help. So, whether through my books, or if my contact information is on my book page, growingupautistic.com/Tracy. I'm available to be, contacted, ask questions. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. So again, thank you. And thank you, Katie, for.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
So I want to thank you, Tracy and Katie, for being with us and giving us such a wonderful, insightful, and inspiring conversation. Tracy, you're really an awesome and an amazing champion. Katie, you were fantastic as our moderator. And I want to thank all of you who have joined us to help celebrate Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month and enjoyed the program. Have a wonderful day. But before you go, our next event is How Magicians Think with Joshua J. on Monday, March 7th at 7 p.m. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org/bookfair for a full schedule and ways that you can get involved. See you next time, and thanks again for coming.